Welcome to the Closer Experience, our midweek experience at the Leadership Church. Closer is a place where believers can grow closer to God. At TLC, we believe that making a spiritual development enhances our relationship with God, and that is more than a Sunday experience. And our Closer community provides just that. And now, the Closer Experience.
Good evening, and welcome to the Wednesday night Closer Experience. I'm so excited to be here with you tonight. If you can believe it, we are already at the end of not 2025, but January of 2025. Let me pull it back in a little bit. And, the beginning of the year is always a good time to start out. Ladies, that's a good time to start out the race running strong. Yeah. But I have already found that in January, I have already had some missteps. But have no fear, we are going to talk tonight about an area that if you are struggling with getting back on board or on path with your financial living, we're going to give you some great nuggets tonight. Last week, we spoke about intentional spiritual living. And if you didn't get a chance to view that podcast, I would encourage you to go back and listen to it. I promise you, it will bless your soul. I was on that call, but it provides you some great nuggets. Again, January is always a good month to try and get it all together so that your last 11 months are reflective of some great planning and changes in January. My name is Ella Jeanette Pollock. I am with the Leadership Church, and tonight I am joined by two amazing women that I intentionally selected to participate in this call because I talk with both of them on a regular basis, and many of our conversations are always about finances. And so who better than the two I already talked with to share this conversation. If you're joining us tonight, whether you're driving or you're sitting at your table, get out your notebook and pen because I promise you, they're going to drop some good nuggets, again, to help get you on course as we approach February of 2025. So tonight I have with me Melissa Stripley. She is also a member with the Leadership Church, and again, just amazing young woman that I spend time with, and hopefully some more time with, because just great energy. The other young lady I have with me is Angelique Spencer, and we lovingly refer to her as Al. She might not respond to Angelique, but she is Al, and I tell you, I love this woman. We hold each other accountable, and finance is an area that we're always pushing one another to be better. So, ladies, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Yes. And Al is in sunny Florida. We don't hold it against you. And Melissa's here in cold Georgia. But I think today was a lovely day.
Today was a great day.
Okay. At any given point, we either got snow or sunshine, and we taken off our jackets. So we don't know all of that stuff. But we're going to focus tonight on an awesome topic, and that is intentional financial living. That topic just excites me. So again, let's go ahead and jump into the conversation. And I want to start, and I'm going to ask both of you this question so you can respond. I'm going to start with you, Melissa. What does intentional financial living mean to you, and how do you incorporate it into your daily life? That's a twofer.
That is a twofer. I would say, what does it mean to me? Planning, a little forecasting, maybe. Mm-hmm. I was not always intentional in my finances, so I am growing in that area, probably more and more over the last 10 years. I would say that I do have a good foundation. Mm-hmm. Where my parents were always talking about, what are you going to do with your finances? Make sure you have a job, saving part of that. I had fallen off the wagon a few times, for sure. But I think just intentional financial living for me is that planning and forecasting, making sure that I'm being responsible with my finances, and then incorporating it into my daily life. As you said, talking to people that I respect in that regards, trying to soak up things more about finances, whether it be a podcast or an article, just surrounding myself with people that know more than me.
Okay.
Trying to, something we say to leadership, get one good nugget per conversation, sometimes two good conversation. I have multiple notes in my phone where I'll hear something and I'll write it down, do a little research later. But I try to, if not daily, at least every week, learn something to, be better in my finances.
That's good. That's good. Okay, so what about you, Al? What does intentional financial living mean to you?
For me, it starts with mindfulness. I think everything starts with mindfulness for me. Being more proactive in your thinking as it relates to what do you want to accomplish. I think oftentimes when you're mindful, you can also equate management. How do I want to manage my future? And in that, there's those conversations that we tend to have about money and where we want to see ourselves. What are our long-term goals associated with that intentionality? And so I think for most people who are listening tonight, I would always encourage them to be a little bit more mindful about where do they see themselves in the short and the long term. Because when you can see it, you can envision it. When you can envision it, you can operate to get there. But if you don't envision it, you don't see the long term, the likelihood is that, I used to tell you all the time, people perish from the lack of knowledge. And we would say that often, but oftentimes we perish from lack of knowledge or consistency to get there. So part of the intentionality is consistency, mindfulness. And if you have those two paired together, the likelihood is you're going to achieve something.
That's
now,
good.
Doesn't always mean that you're going to achieve it quickly, but it certainly means that you have a game plan to get there. So I liken it to a diet. My finances is like a diet. I can have a love affair with it and I could do well, or I cannot and I could do miserable. And you can see the results based on how I treat that diet. So if you have a healthy mindfulness as it relates to your finances, one or two things are going to happen. Either you're going to save and you're going to grow and you're going to see things manifest, or you are not and you're going to complain and you're going to see that you have nothing to show for your labor. That's the intention. That's where the intentionality comes from. Now, you said, how do I apply it into my life? I equate it to a diet. If I know that I want to see the results, then I have to be consistent in doing that thing, which is setting realistic goals that are obtainable and realistic. Because I'm sure all of us can sit and say, I create a goal, but sometimes we have lofty goals that are not realistic and obtainable. And so when you're talking about financial freedom, financial independence, it has to be something that is realistic, it is obtainable based on your means, not what other people think your means are, but based on your means. And I think that is the key to being successful.
Okay, so between the two of you, I'm trying to already write down stuff.
I totally agree.
That's and you know what? One of the things I was thinking of the youth today and how if they get that concept about where they want to go, that they can start planning today. It's one of those, I remember saying that I wanted to put some money away. And it hurts me to say this, 5 years went by that I didn't do it. And it hurt. And I try not to remind myself because that's 5 years that I lost. And had I done it, I would be in such an amazing place.
Sure.
And that's so getting youth. If you're joining us and you're young folk, I can't emphasize enough of what both Melissa and Al has said. Planning. It doesn't happen just by osmosis. You've got to put an intention to your finances. You got to guide your finances. But talking about the youth, something that comes to mind is, how do you navigate the tension between enjoying the present moment and saving for the future?
Yeah. I think that goes back to what you were saying. Like, I can think back when I was younger. My first job, I had an annuity, and I had it like immediately in my first job, or first like out of college job.
Okay.
And I had it probably for 5 years. So let's say 20 to 24, 25. But I was like, why am I saving all this? Why am I doing this? This is stupid. Stopped. So that was in 2000. I would be almost done, right, with my annuity. And like, you and I talk, even like you just said, like for years you go, I'm going to do something with this money. I'm going to do something with this money. And you sit and you wait. I think it's one of those things of like, what can you see in front of you versus the things you can't see, right? Like you can't see 20 years from now. But I think like if we could talk to people in their finances and say like a CD, something that's 1 year, 5 years, you could even see 5 years, right? You know how fast. If you say, oh, think back when COVID was, right? That was 5 years. That's fast, right? So you can see that happening faster than you could see, say, 20, right? But I do think that it takes kind of like Al said, that mindset. It does take some real planning because you can enjoy the present and then still have the future. I was talking to someone just recently about, the joys of a 401k or even a Roth IRA. You don't see that money. And once it's being deducted for a while, because it comes out of your paycheck or it comes post, before you get paid, you will forget about it. And you'll look up in 3 years, and if it's, going good, you'll be like, wow, where did all that come from? And I think like those are the things that are easier to do versus like having to send the money to the, wherever you're going to do the investment or whatever
if you have to touch it, it's more problematic. Melissa, I want to stay here for just a second because one of the points that I want to get to behind this question is you and your husband love to travel. And so I guess I bring that up because the tendency is if I save, then I can't do this. And I think you have a pretty good balance of that. So talk about how do you, and where some of the last places you've traveled, but you also put away, and you're also very actively financially in the church. So talk about that balance for you and your husband.
So that is it's funny because that's one of the other questions on here that speaks really like to me and my ministry and why I love my church so much. But that growth for sure happened because of the leadership church, which was almost 11 years ago now. So we do a budget. Like I said, this financial responsibility thing is relatively new for me, but it's important to me because my parents are retired. My husband's parents are retired. I see the life they live and I'm like, I need to get there, right? Like that's something I want. We do travel quite a bit. One thing we do is sit down twice in the beginning of the year. So kind of at the last week of the year and then again 2 months later, just to feel like to really reflect on the things we wrote down. So we talk about, we're going to do our one big trip. That's normally out of the country. We're going to do one away game for a sporting event. We're going to go on a road trip. My husband goes on a trip with his friends and I go on a girls trip either with my sister or my friends. So that's kind of how that plays out. I am actually hoping to travel less this year. That is a goal of mine. I was on a plane every month of 2024 except one. So I am intentionally trying to spend less money on an airplane. But like you said, we sit down and we talk about it, right? So they're not, a couple of them were last minute trips, but none of them were like just fly by night trips. We put our tithes first, then it's our mortgage, then it's, all of our other bills. We talk about growth in our tithes. We talk about growth in our savings. So we set out like, we actually have a joint savings account, and then we each have our own savings account. So we set out like, what are the goals for those things, and how can we like cut in certain places to grow in other places, right? I was just talking to Pastor Tony about like travel, and does he need help doing a travel evaluation? Because we love what sounds like extravagant trips. We just got back from Portugal. We're going to go to Vietnam this year. But all the countries you've seen us go through, right? They're all ones where the dollar is strong. So we're not just,
that's a good nugget.
Yeah, we're not out here just like spinning the globe and hitting the dot, right? We do a lot of research, and that's part of the fun, though. Like we'll decide while we're in Portugal, we decided Vietnam. Okay. So we'll send each other videos. We'll pass back and forth research, and that's like sometimes a Friday night instead of going to the movies, we watch a bunch of YouTubes about Vietnam. So it's like, we save a little money.
I like that.
The trip. But yeah, I think sitting down, writing out like with our house, what is a big spend thing we're going to do with our house? Those are the kind of things we do. And the taskmaster that Pastor Alicia gave for this year's intentional living, I think is good, because you take bites at a time to help you keep yourself on track. Yeah. Instead of getting to November and realizing like, oh my gosh, I didn't mark off 8 of these things that I planned to do. Yeah. So.
And just real quick, so the taskmaster is one. We have a pastor who she's results driven. So she breaks it down. And so she has the membership, a taskmaster where you set 3 goals. Don't set 9, don't set 12, because then you get yourself out of the realm of realistic, and you're really setting yourself up for failure, because trying to make too many changes makes it tough and it's not natural. So starting with 3, that's 3 per quarter. Yeah. And so Al, that feeds right into ongoing conversations. You live by quarters. But go ahead and answer how you navigate between the tension between enjoying the present and saving for the future, and then talk about your quarterly goals and how you approach that.
Sure. I think, first of all, I know you had made a comment earlier about, I want to revisit a comment about young people.
Yes.
And the notion that young people need to figure out a plan and understand that if they can glean what we know at our age, that they could be in a better situation. I just want to say, for the record, I'm still young. Okay. So I'm amongst young folks. So for all of us who are 50s and over, we're still part of the young folk. So I don't want folks thinking that by the time
the younger,
because I think a notion sometimes is, and the reason why I brought that up is because sometimes people, when they get to a certain age, they feel a level of disappointment that they are not where they thought they should be. And so then there's that thing that kind of sets in, which is that hopelessness, the despair, the thought of that I haven't achieved. And then, the doom and gloom sets in. And so, I work in an industry where I see individuals who are 90 and 100 years old all the time who are thriving. And so I am of the mindset that there is never a late opportunity. It's just an opportunity missed if you choose not to take it. There's a difference. And so I'm encouraging those people who are listening, take the opportunity to say, I want to set my plan, because in your youth, oftentimes you can make rash decisions. Well, you know what? 50s, we make rash decisions. But who's to say that we're not, destined to be here in 2 or 100? So when you look at it from that vantage point, it is never too late to create a plan that's going to get you to the next level. Never too late. Fair. So part of what I love when I heard you talk about your travels and your excursions in life, you set a plan. You set an intentional plan to get to the next level. I think part of setting your intentionality outside of being mindful is making sure that when you create the goal, whatever that is, that you put a timeline to it. If you don't have a timeline to something, and it's like writing your plan and making it plain, you got to put a deadline to it. How many people have you ever heard say, I wish I could have, I should have, I would have, and then they never did? And those are same people who met the graveyard and they're there, and all their shoulda, coulda, wouldas are still here on the side. So what I'm encouraging is making sure that when you create an intentional plan, make sure that it's realistic. So for me, I operate in quarters. So first quarter, I have a first quarterly goal. Now, I will say it this way. I don't make a lofty goal for the entire year. I make a tangible goal that I know that I can receive and achieve within my first 3 months. That should be a building blocker to get me to the next goal that I have. And so when someone asks you, how do you eat an apple? What do you say? One bite at a time, right? So there's the same process, the same philosophy as it relates to becoming financially independent. You do it one bit at a time, but making sure that it is a building blocker to the next phase to get you successful. So for example, if you have a financial goal, and then make it small. Some people, it could be, I just want to clear off a debt. Okay, well, let's list the debts, not the debt plural. Let's go ahead and list all of the debts. Make sure that you know what they are, and then attack them with a intentional plan of, I'm going to become debt free by the end of the year. Well, if you know all of your debts at the beginning of the year, you list them all out, attack them, whether it be the smallest one at a time, knock them out one at a time. I'm going to guarantee you 2 things that's going to happen. 1, you're going to feel proud of yourself, but 2, you're going to have a sense of accomplishment. And when you have that, guess what you're going to do? You're going to tell other people about it. You're going to now have a testimony. You're going to have more confidence in it. So you're going to have to attack it like you can't attack anything else other than, like I said, a diet. Treat it like a diet. When you can say at the beginning of the year, I want to be health conscious. That's mentally wellness. I want to be mentally and physically well, right? Well, why don't you put that same goal, say, I want to be financially well? Because you have to have a relationship with money. And I told Jeanette this the other day. Most people don't realize that you have to have a relationship with money. It's either you're going to have a good one or you're going to have a bad one. But the bottom line is you're going to have a relationship with money, and you can tell the relationship you have with money, and everybody can do this. So if you're listening to me, track this, see it for yourself. Look at your bank account, look at your debit card, look at your statement, and look at where your money has been spent. You can tell if you have a healthy relationship with money based on what you spend.
Oh, hold up. I can't keep up with all these nuggets.
And you can tell if you have a bad relationship with money because you're going to be able to track where your money is spent. So if you're the type of person that says, I want a healthy lifestyle, but you go out to eat all the time and you're spending money out eating and dining and socializing, the likelihood is when you say you want to pay off a debt, you didn't pay that debt off because you were doing the opposite. So how do you turn it around to make it work for you? Does that make sense, ladies?
My toes hurt.
I'm just saying, I was going to say, pause, let people digest this, because I think you slapped them around, picked them up, more. I think somebody was eating something, they put it down because they felt convicted.
Right.
Let me just say, thank you, Barbara. She was saying, I'm 65 and still getting it right. And that's such an important point, that don't ever think it's too late. Don't ever think it's too late, and discount yourself and what God can still do in your life. So, wow, just a minute. I need to breathe on that one because you went in.
Good.
And I'm sorry, I may have even missed the question. I just knew that I'm young, and I just want to make sure that was stated.
No, you taught us how to navigate. You did. You definitely.
Oh.
Whether it's one quarter at a time, one bite at a time, really look at where your spending is. And are you, you can't have both goals. I want to be healthy and spend all my money at the restaurant. Like
I told everybody, this was going to be some good nuggets. So
yeah, that was really good.
Get your pencil out, and you might have to go back and listen to this recording, because at the end of the day, we really do want to give you some insight and some nuggets that are really impactful, so that you can have your 2025 financial goals are met, and it doesn't look like the beginning of 2025. Now, if they look the same, you're going to have to get on the bus and come back and try it again. We don't want to see you back on the bus.
No.
Next question, because this is a good one. So have you ever experienced a significant shift in your financial mindset, and what triggered it, and how did it impact your approach to money?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Al, I'm gonna go ahead and start with you.
So full disclosure, a lot of people don't like to talk about, particularly in the church, when you go through relationship things. For me, I was married for years and I got divorced. Okay. And, that was a tough time. And I'm sure those of you who listen, some people may have never been married, but they've gone through breakups and makeups and you name it. And when you find yourself in a single situation, particularly for those single moms or the people who are now navigating this world of being single, you see your finances completely different when you're accustomed to having joint income. So my sister talked about having, a joint income for the household, separate income for separate income for her husband. But when I'm speaking to the women and the men that are out there who solely have to do this with one income, when all the prices in our economy, food is high, the cost of living is high, people don't get cost of living adjustments. When you don't have career opportunities where those dollars are increasing at the same rate that the cost of the market is increasing, that's a challenge, real talk. But one of the things that I think is important to note is that when you live below your means, that when the market or anything goes up, you don't feel it as bad. It's only when you are living above your means and you've extended your debt and you have expanded your debt, then you start feeling that feeling of suffocation, because you feel like now you're under the mountain, not on top of it, but you're under it. And you're trying to figure out how to climb that mountain. And so the shifting for me as a single person was, how can I live below my means to still be able to live the lifestyle that I want and to still be a giver? Because my natural inclination is to be a giver. How can I still be able to do those things that satisfy me, but also to be able to sustain the livelihood that I want? So that was the first part of the mind shift, of recognizing that I had to figure out, how do I live below my means? So where do I cut the cost? And every single one of us, that's why I said, go back and look at your spending. I really do want you to do that as a homework assignment. Go back and track your spending, because the moment you can track your spending, you can start to look at what are the things that I personally need to do in order to start to save and make a shift in my financial future. So for me, my first cost was in hair. Okay. So if I'm going to be honest, so for me, I wanted to make sure that I was able to afford a certain look and aesthetic, but I didn't want to have to keep paying $300-$400 for hair, weaves, extensions, and you name it. So guess what I did? Thanks to YouTube University, I learned how to braid my own hair. I do my own hair. So
and you look lovely.
Thank you, ma'am. But here's the thing. It came with a cost. It now costs me my time. And so most people don't realize that the commodity that you can never get back is going to be time. And so how you use your time also would determine how successful you're going to be in this financial freedom. So most people who will say, I don't have time to do stuff, then you start to look at your day. Here's another homework assignment, my friends. Look at your day in 24 hours. At the end of the day, journal. What did you do all day? If you spend more time on social media, scrolling on your phone, talking on the phone, and didn't do anything that's productive, how are you going to get financial success when you are wasting your time? That's important because time equals money. So if you want to make money, you have to do something to do it. And so for me, I had to sit and learn how I can cut costs. So for me, the first thing was extensions and hair.
Mhm.
The second was I can do my own pedicures. I can do my own manicures. How much, ladies, do we spend on manicures and pedicures? Now, I'm not saying that you can't get your nails done. I'm just saying there's different ways that you can do it. That is a cost. And more importantly, it's a value. Each time you think about money, associate what is the value of that thing? How does that value connect to me? Because there's a moral connection that people have when it comes to money. That's why you got another relationship.
Wow. Okay. This is okay. Now we talked about some things prior, and so and let me just say here, if you're the smartest one in the room, you need to find another room.
Amen.
As we listen to both Melissa and Al, I'm around these women because I learn and glean so much, and it makes me better. And it holds me in many ways accountable because it's one of those, now you can't behave the same way because now you know difference.
Right.
So if you're listening tonight, now you can't behave the same because we have dropped some jewels tonight.
Oh, yeah.
To help you to change your trajectory for the rest of the year. We are growing short on time, but I have just a couple more questions. And Melissa, I want you to jump in. And so you talked about you haven't always been in the same place or this mental place where you are financially. What triggered your change in your financial focus?
Honestly, I am opposite of Al. Marriage made me more responsible. Still like a real lighthearted, always on the go, life of the party person. I was never really concerned with my future or what's going to happen, when I'm 40 plus, right? I was the young folk looking at what's going to happen tomorrow. What am I going to do this year? How am I going to blow it out next year? And just really being able to connect with someone. When we got engaged, we knew that we wanted God first in our marriage. And that's actually how we were led to the leadership church, or that's how I was led to Pastor Cash and Elisha. And just one of the big things that they talked about, or that we used to say all the time, is, how is your life changing? Are you just sitting there not growing? Whether it be in your spiritual walk, whether it be as a wife, whether it be personally, you need to be growing. You can't just sit in the same space doing the same things all the time. Mm-hmm. A big thing with budgeting happened with our tithes and offering. Not even, I think I've told you before, Jeanette, how bad it was when I first started the church. And now it's just like, how could I not give, right? Like, the church gives so much back to me. I'm able to connect with even just this call tonight from knowing the church, right? And I think that's where the mind shift really came from, being able to trust the Lord in my giving, and him saying, like, if you can be responsible, I can reward you with more. I wasn't being responsible, and so I couldn't handle more, right? I was waiting. I think, like, some of the conversations you and I are having now, and I have with Pastor Tony a lot, is what am I doing with the surplus? And that's a mind shift. Something that he talked about 2 Sundays ago was that intentional risk, right? And I think you and I kind of talked about it before, like, I don't want to give up my thousands of dollars. And then I think he said the other day, like, and you lose 30,000 in one day. I was like, no.
That didn't help.
Because one thing you know about me, when I read that question, I thought you were going to ask me what was the difference between being frugal. Because I am cheap. I don't do eyebrows. I don't do hair. I don't do nails. I don't wear makeup. But I prioritize my spending. So we're like, I just think the mind shift, honestly, was being able to, trust in the Lord, have faith, and then, part of my daily prayer is that I am a good steward, right? That I am constantly learning. My life is growing, and I am being like moved in the right place, whether it's in my being a wife, definitely in my finances, because I don't want to be wasteful.
Mm-hmm.
And then just like in interactions with people, right? Like, am I receiving people in a good way? Are they receiving me in a good way? I tell you this a lot, Jeanette, that I want to be a person that people look to and they can say that they received a good nugget from me, right? I think this call, you said it earlier, and I said why I was destined to be on this call today.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that you have me on this call today. I'm so grateful that you're in my life. I'm so grateful for my church. Al, I just met you today, and I'm like, Al can join our calls every day, Jeanette.
Call me anytime, sweetie.
She's being recruited. She don't even know it, but
she
loves me.
Know how I am. I want to be like, Al.
She's deep. She's deep. And you know what? I know the hour's growing late, but I have to ask Al this to just touch on this because we talked about it. And let me say one other thing. It doesn't matter your age. If someone has good information, it's still good information.
Amen.
It really is. So
Amen.
Get past what you can't learn for someone. You never know who God puts in front of you.
Amen.
That's your lesson, your education. I was talking to Pastor Tony, and it might have been today. It just blends together. I get a sermon every day, but the teacher will appear when the student is ready, and oftentimes it's all around us.
Amen.
But we're not ready. We're not. So I dropped that nugget, but Alan, I want you and I were talking about something that I just think was profound, and I want you to touch on it before we wrap up. You talked about tracking your money and visiting your money on a daily basis. Talk more about that.
So many of us, we don't date ourselves. So I like to date my money. I like to see how is it going. I like to see what ain't working right. And I like to make sure, as if I'm dating my money, okay, we have a good relationship going on. So when I wake up in the morning, I like to date my money. I want to see what happened with my money last night, because I believe money should be making money for you when you're sleeping. And so if it's not, there's always ways to readjust. But when you date your money, or you're visiting your money every day, you're able to track your spending. And I joke about it often, but this is real truth. If you go through a whole day, most people will swipe their debit card and not know how much they've swiped in a week. Most people will not even know how much they swiped in a day. And so it's so important that at night I reconcile, just like when I do my gratitude and I do my prayers at night, and I'm thanking God for all the wonderful things he did. Before I even say my prayer, I'm looking at my little date, which is my checkbook. And I'm making sure that my money is supposed to be where it's supposed to be, so that I don't wake up the next day with an overdraft. I don't have to wake up the next day wondering, did somebody have access to my account that they didn't? Do I have some superfluous charges on my account that shouldn't be there? I'm able to see that, and I'm able to jump up and see or make the necessary changes needed, or contact the credit bureaus or contact whomever to say, I have some erroneous charges on my account. Visiting your money only makes sense. One thing Oprah Winfrey said years ago, she says, I sign every check because I like to know where my money went.
I like that.
Most people will have the tendency of never reconciling their bank statements. And what happens is they get these automatic statements and or paper copies. How many people, if you want to really be honest, really sit down and look line by line when you get your statements? Most often not. Most people will get them and say, oh, let me look at the bottom line, which is the balance. And then they will discard it. So one of the things I'm going to say to you, when you talk about living a healthy life, you want to have an intentional mindset when it comes to finances. 3 things that I'm going to have you do as a homework assignment. I guarantee you, if you do this, you will feel empowered no later than 30 days, because you're going to have to wait the 30-day cycle so that you can see your statement. Every day you swipe your debit card, write down that. If you don't have a tracker, if you don't have a calendar, if you don't have a planner, write down your spending daily. Create a journal, write down your spending daily. At the end of the month, that spending should reconcile with the statement that the bank gives you. If it doesn't, question why. That's important, because if you don't know where your money's going, you need to see where the variance is. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'm going to say to you is treat your finances like a diet. If you want to have a healthy diet, you're going to do all the necessary things to be healthy. So that means you're going to track your spending. You're going to figure out, do I need these things or do I want these things? You're going to have a relationship with money to decide, am I consuming things that I need or want? Then set the priorities as it relates to your long-term goals. Create, number 3, a goal that's going to be realistic and obtainable. Don't create lofty goals. I want to be a millionaire in the next year. Okay, I do too. But there's a process that you're going to have to go through. If you're not willing to take the time and you're wasting your physical and precious time, the likelihood of you getting to become that millionaire is not going to happen, because you're not doing the work. No different than a diet. You will never see results if you don't exercise. You never see results if you don't eat the right food. It's the same thing when it comes to your finances. If you don't do the work, you will not be able to see the results. Okay. And the last thing I'm going to say is make sure that you pay yourself. After you pay your tithes, pay yourself. Learn how to pay yourself. Because if you don't learn how to pay yourself, nobody else is going to want to pay you. Make sure that you know your value. So if your time is worth something, like if you spend time doing something, figure out how to equate a value to your time. Let that start making money for you. Don't just be wasting your time doing everything. If somebody it's kind of like, how do you take your personal time and make it marketable so that you can start generating revenue off of your time? We do a lot of things in the world for people for free and never ask for a penny. Be okay with asking people to pay you for your time, because it's valuable. That's
okay,
all.
I can't take it all in. I can't take it all in. I feel like, where's my book, my tracker?
And that's just being intentional. So when you're intentional, now you think about it. We are all, every person by the sound of my voice who's listening has gifts. God has given us all gifts. And those gifts, it's okay for you to be able to capitalize on your gifts as an exchange. It could be bartered. It could be donated. It could be done for free. However, you can monetize it if you want to. And if the goal long-term is to be debt-free, maybe that is the way that you do it, monetizing your time.
You know what? We might have to do a part 2 on this.
Yeah.
Because it might have been overwhelming. But let me tell you, you will have the opportunity to go back and listen to this. And I encourage you to do so. If you haven't got off to a stellar start in January, don't give up on yourself. Continue to, every time you fall, I don't remember the song, but every time we fall, get back up, because it's dependent upon you, and you're worth it. You're worth it. So don't throw your goals to the side. If you have already, in January, you've already gone sideways, get back at it. Continue to put priority and be intentional. It can't be haphazard. It's got to have some mindfulness, some thought to it. Ladies, we are so over our time, but I couldn't stop because I was so caught up in just listening. I got scratched notes all over the place. But thank you again so much they're asking for a part 2. Thank you so much for your time. It has been a stellar conversation. Truly, truly, I hope something was said that benefits you to grow financially, intentionally in 2025. Stay tuned as we go into February. We're going to be right back here on Wednesday evening with a next great topic. I won't share it just with you. That means you got to come back. But I hope you have a wonderful evening, ladies. Thank you again so much. God bless you until we see you again next week. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.